Everyone, and welcome to another match reaction show on Football Tour Podcast. My name is Ozzie, and I'm your host for this evening. What an absolute shit show that we encountered earlier on today, as Liverpool lost 2-1 to Manchester United at Anfield. A result that I didn't envision. I didn't even think it was an option, to be honest with you. But fortunately, it looks like Liverpool have lost three back-to-back games in the Premier League. But in all competitions, it's now four in a row, which is a huge concern, and alarm bells are certainly ringing. So, we'll touch on the current issues at the club. We'll discuss the game in a bit more detail, as well as the individual performances as I present my player ratings. But this is also a calling show, so if you'd like to call in and have your say, feel free to hit the link in the live chat, and I will get you on later on in the show. So, let's start with a match review. Um, now, in terms of Liverpool's start to the game, whatever game plan that we had pretty much went out the window as we conceded a goal a minute into the game as Mbembo makes it 1-0 to Manchester United. The biggest talking point of the goal was the head injury that unfortunately McAllister suffered in the build-up. The ref conveniently didn't see the incident and it wasn't even reviewed by VAR. In any other match, that game would probably have stopped for that type of foul or that type of incident due to the extent of that sort of collision or that injury. But look, whether it was given or not, I'm not going to use that as an excuse, or I'm not going to move the lamppost in terms of what actually happened. As we defended poorly in the build-up, Van Dijk is out of position as he was the defender that bashes into McAllister and Mbeumo. But instead of chasing Mbeumo, who was through on goal, he was pretty much signaling to Konate to cover for him. And in that sort of late stage of that move, for me, that's not acceptable. It is completely Virgil van Dijk's fault for his lack of effort in chasing back his man. And for me, he didn't make the interception that was expected of him. So, unfortunately for me, he is at fault for that goal. And from there onwards, we were playing catch up. But Liverpool had moments. Van Dijk, ironically, had a half a chance, I would say, with a header from a free kick, which he hits it wide and gets all wrong, quite frankly. Gakpo was very unlucky not to score, as Salah provided a nice through ball from that right hand side. Gakpo produced the perfect first touch, hit a shot curling towards goal. Fortunately, his shot hits the post. United, for me, could have made it 2-0, which would have been disastrous at the time, as Bruno Fernandes hits the post himself. And we almost gifted him a goal and Mason Mount hit a shot from distance, and that was stopped by Mamadashvili, who, if I'm being honest, looked very, very nervous throughout the game. And then later on in that first half, Gakpo produced a left-footed cross that somehow hit the post in its build-up. And in the end, in that same move, Salah had a header on goal, which was straight at the keeper. Poor effort, no real power, no real direction in that whatsoever. And then moments later, I've been criticizing Konate in terms of his lack of ball playing ability this season. But in this moment, he produced the perfect through ball to Alexander Isak. He went through on goal, hits the first time shot, but unfortunately wasn't good enough. Hit it straight at the keeper. Now, if this was an informed Isak, or maybe even the Newcastle Isak, he would have smashed it in the bottom corner or even the top corner. It definitely would have been a goal. And for me, I think he should have buried it. And in the second half, I was quite surprised that Armstrong didn't change the personnel because the first half wasn't a great account of ourselves. So I was expecting a few tweaks. Nothing of that happened in the opening of the second half. But Liverpool did start positively. Gakpo had another effort towards goal, which smashes onto the post. He hit the post three times today. Could have had a hat trick at that point. Then eventually, we counting our blessing in that moment was that Slot makes a few changes, and it completely changed the shape of our team. Katika came on from McAllister, Jones came on for Gravenberg, and Verts came on for Conor Bradley. So we pretty much switched it up to a 4-2-4, which was a risk considering the personnel that was brought on. You know, Szoboszlai went to right back. Jones and Verts were pretty much holding midfielders, and that was a concern whilst the game was being played for me. And we had four attackers up top. Salah had a golden opportunity from close range to get the equalizer, but you know, in a very in a surprising way, he gets the technique all wrong and hits a shot that goes completely wide. Shocking effort from the Egyptian king, who we would expect better from in those type of moments. And then you have Chiesa who comes on and he provides the assist for the equalizer as his low cross finds Cody Gakpo in the danger zone and he hits the empty net to make it 1-1. And, at that time, I was very positive. I thought maybe we can get something out of the game, even if it's a point, which I didn't say out loud because I didn't want us to, just walk away with a point. But it put us in a great sort of momentum going into the last 15, 20 minutes of the game. But then minutes later, Liverpool got complacent in possession, gave a corner kick away, and Manchester United capitalized. They didn't directly score from the corner kick, but it was Bruno Fernandes who pretty much hooked the ball over into the danger zone, and big head Harry Maguire heads it into the corner to give United the lead once again. But that wasn't it. Moments later, Liverpool thought they got the equaliser. As Frimpong, who also just came off the bench, hits a fantastic cross towards Gakpo in point blank range, probably a few yards away from goal, but he gets the connection all wrong with his header, and unfortunately, his effort goes wide, and that was the big, big point for us to get the equaliser. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. But overall, like the title of my show, a diabolical performance from the Reds. Yes, the more positive Liverpool fan might say we created chances, and maybe in any other given day we would have got a result today. But let's not kid ourselves. We were awful from the first minute. The goalkeeper looked shaky. The defense were all over the place. Konate was covering for Van Dijk throughout the whole game. The fullbacks, for me, didn't provide any output. We were getting run through our midfield due to our slightly different shape than normal. We switched up a little bit. We had the Palestine Sobozlai playing a bit more further up, playing as attacking midfielders. But the big question is when you've got that kind of setup for those two players, why didn't you play Florian Wirtz? That is the perfect setup for him to play. We haven't played, a 4-3-3 formation of that shape in recent weeks. That is the role where, alongside Szoboszlai, I think he would have done really, really well. And I was very surprised that McAllister got the nod ahead of Wirtz, only because Wirtz, for me, has shown not great form, but he has shown little glimpses that he's slowly showing his true capabilities. Whereas McAllister has been going in a downward spiral. He's been awful this season. Whether it's due to injury issues or whatnot, I'm going to say by face value, his performances have been terrible so far. So why was McAllister given the license to play that attacking midfield role? In my eyes, right now, he doesn't have the drive, he doesn't have the energy or aggression to play as an advanced midfielder. So I was very surprised by that inclusion. And also because of McAllister and Szoboszlai playing further up the pitch, unfortunately it led Isak to drop deep on occasions or play in a slightly deeper role, whether it's on the sides or in a more central position for him to receive the ball. That's not why we signed it. That's not why we spent 125 million for Isak. We're not playing to his skill set. So that needs to be addressed in the coming games. Salah showed a couple of moments in the game, but for me, that's not good enough. He was so rash in his execution. So he's clearly a player that is playing with low confidence because his technique is all over the place right now. And look, let's not beat around the bush. This is on the manager to resolve. Now, I'm not slot out or anything along those lines because that's a bit far fetched in my eyes. But he needs to fix this and he needs to do it soon. He inherited a great squad from Jurgen Klopp, and with a few minor tweaks, he helped us win the league last season. This summer, he's bought some real top class players, but we've digressed as a collective, as a team. So how does that make sense? Why do we not dominate games anymore? That's my concern. Why are we so afraid to play progressive football? Why do we take risk by switching to a 4-2-4 formation to get a draw or a win? Why do we rely on substitutes to change the outcome of our games, i.e., match winners coming off the bench? This is not acceptable. We should be the team that plays to our advantage, i.e., play with possession and play with authority on that pitch. We are the champions. In Slot's words, we should be killing teams with passes. So where has that philosophy gone all of a sudden? He's playing with a different approach in my eyes. Last season, I would say Slot was renowned for having a more calm and collected sort of approach to playing the game, especially from the back line. But this season, sorry, everything's a bit more on the front foot. And unfortunately, it's costing us games. And the players aren't quite aligned to these new tactics that have been presented. And I'm not going to just point the finger at the manager um, because I do think he's at fault. But at the same time, the players need to be held accountable for their performances as well, because they haven't shown their true capabilities. They haven't played with real energy or commitment like we've seen over the last 12 months. So whatever needs to be done, it needs to be done quick. What he needs to do now, in my opinion, is play the players that are in form and take it from there. Don't just play players because they're your favorites or they are the star players of your team or they're on higher salaries or you got to deal with egos. I couldn't care less. Even if you have to drop someone like a Salah or an Isak, it has to be done for the short term in order for us to grow and progress in the long term. Because right now, 4 wins in a row in all competitions is unheard of. It's not what we're used to as a Liverpool fans. And I'm not, trying to sound like a sport fan or anything, but we're a Liverpool Football Club. We are here to challenge for major honours. We're not a team that are fighting relegation. We're not of that magnitude at all. So this is unacceptable to our standards. So hopefully, Slot looks into his mirror or whatnot and, figures out what needs to be done going forward. Some players need to be dropped. Let's not beat around the bush. There are players that are playing there because maybe they don't have competition or maybe they're just there and, they have a bit of a complacency in their approach to the game. Whatever is the case, he needs to find a winning formula. If that means switch up the formation a little bit to suit the current crop of players we have, so be it. But these crop of players should be able to play the formation they have. I just feel like the application hasn't been there as a collective. So that's my concern going forward. But what we'll do now, we'll do the player ratings and I'll discuss the individual performances a bit more in more detail. And then we can kind of get a better assessment of where I see the team currently and what needs to be done going forward. But before that, I'll just go through some of the comments. Um, Ozan, big up Ozan as always says that thumbnail makes me sick, Ozzy. Come to think of it, I might have to change that. So yeah, I might switch it up after the show. Yeah, it's not the site that I want to see either. Um, yeah, it's not ideal, but yeah, I might have to look into removing it at some point. Uh, I was gonna say some people within our own fan base claim Slot has lost the dressing room. I don't think he's lost the dressing room personally, but uh, as a collective, we are not performing together. We're not playing to our abilities, and that's something that they have to work on together. It's not. I don't think it's one person to blame. I think everyone is at fault for this one. No one's performed at a great level, in my opinion. The only player that for me has showcased his talent is probably Ekatike, but he's a new signing, so it's a bonus that he's played the way he has so far this season. But the rest of the squad, and no one's played to their standards. So uh, I wouldn't quite go along the lines of him losing the dressing room. I just feel like we're performing at a level where We look a bit disjointed. I feel like we're a team of individuals right now. We're not playing with any cohesion, and we're not playing as a collective. So that's of concern going forward. Partnerships haven't been formed within our team, and that's something that needs to be done very, very soon. Dara, big up Dara. He says nobody thought Konate and Gakpo would be our best players. It's definitely not Dara. They've been, probably our worst players so far this season, but fair play to them. They were really good today in terms of their standards. Of course, the result doesn't align to that, but they produced some good performances today. Playmaker was a mistake for sure. I totally agree with you. I think it was a mistake. His pass to Gakpo was sublime. Unfortunately, Gakpo hit the post. Yep, that is true. Ekitike should have started. Looking at how he performed in the second half, potentially, but when you spend 125 million on a striker, you're expected to give him a bit of a run or give him the upper hand to start certain games. But that's something we'll have to look into our next fixture, which is in the Champions League against Frankfurt on Wednesday. So, let's see how the team is presented for that fixture. But before that, we'll do our player ratings. And then we'll go through each player, and then you guys feel free to let me know in the chat what your scores are, and then we'll take it from there. So, in terms of Mamadashvili, um, looked very nervous today. I wouldn't say he made any errors or anything like that. Mind you, a part of me feels like he should have done better with the first goal because he did get a bit of a touch to it. It wasn't hit with real power or venom. I feel like he maybe should have done better in that moment there. But as it was the opening minute of the game, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he wasn't fully ready, but that's still not an excuse, to be honest with you. Um, Made a couple saves here and there, nothing outstanding, if I'm being brutally honest with you. So for his rating, um, I think he was slightly below average. So I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10. Conor Bradley, I thought he was awful today. Some fans might have a completely different opinion. For me, he was awful in every shape or form. So defensively, wasn't great. Cunha got the best out of him quite a few times. From an attacking point of view, the runs he was making, it wasn't helping, Salah in terms of picking up good passes. And when he found the ball eventually, he had a very negative action. He'll just pass it back, or he'll overplay, and he didn't really have an idea in terms of what to do with the ball in the final third. And I just feel like he looked a bit lost. So for me, a poor performance from him. So in terms of his rating, I don't mean to be harsh. I'm gonna give him a 2 out of 10. I was not impressed with him at all. Konate, much, much, much better performance from Ibu today. He was dominant. This was the type of performance that you expect to see from Ibu because that's what we're used to over the years. And it was by far his best performance so far this season. He was really good. Unfortunately, the captain alongside him, he was poor. So he had to, get him out of jail quite a few times, covering for him. I know he didn't cover for him in the opening goal, but in other plays during the game, he did really well in that regards. And what impressed me was his confidence of actually carrying the ball and threading, forward passes to the strikers. He did that on 2 or 3 occasions, and that was positive to see. Now, whether he can do that consistently remains to be seen, but it's a positive that he has that in his locker and he has the courage to do that. So that's something he needs to work on because when we're playing against teams that present the low block, creativity will have to come from all parts of the pitch. So the centre backs need to play their role in that regards. So Konate, I expect him to do more in those kind of moments. So for me, solid performance. So his rating, I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. The ratings aren't going to be very high, as you can probably, gather right now. But I think he's probably the strongest player out of a bad bunch today. Van Dijk, no good performance from him at all. Um, the opening goal, completely his fault. No, out of position, tried to tell the other defender to um, cover his player when he already had a player that he was marking, put him in a tricky situation. Unfortunately, led to a goal. And there was moments in the game where he just didn't look like he was in control of the defense line. Had a few goals that Kirkers even kicked the ball in Kirkers' face at one point and blamed him for standing there, which is a bit wild to be fair. So he just looked a bit all over the place. So one of his poor performances so far this season, unfortunately. And if it wasn't for Konate, it could have been a lot worse from a Liverpool point of view, but also from a overall point of view in terms of the final result. So for me, I'm going to give him a 3 out of 10. I think he wasn't great today at all. Perkez, mm, mixed emotions in terms of his performance, to be fair. Showed moments where, he was a bit positive or made some good interceptions and made some really good runs on that left-hand side. And there was moments where he was out of position quite a bit, looked a bit erratic at times, so it didn't bode me with any sort of confidence or calmness when when he was on the ball. So I do feel like, that's something that he'll need to add to his game in terms of having more composure and, playing with sort of less aggression. Obviously, you like to see aggression in football players, but sometimes I feel like it doesn't bode well, or he's not sort of using it to his advantage in certain moments. One positive that I can take today is a slight positive, it's not a huge one, is that he was playing better passes with Gakpo on that left hand side. They were making better runs and better movements amongst the two, but nothing that's groundbreaking in my eyes. So for me, decent performance, but not great. I think he just did slightly better than Van Dijk, so I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10, but still not a good performance in my eyes. Groundberg, I thought he was solid today. Was the one that tried to bring his presence into the midfield, made quite a few interceptions, some decent passes as well. So I thought he was decent today. I don't think he was amazing or anything to that nature, but I thought he showed a good account of himself. So I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. Sobozlai, I feel for Sobozlai because in every game he's not playing one position. He's a number 10, then he's a number 8, then he's a right back. Every game he's played 2, 3 positions, which for me needs to stop. He needs to be able to play in a stable position, i.e., one position for the remainder of the game. Until that doesn't happen, it's an issue for me because if you keep playing this player in different roles in every game, you're going to burn him out. He's going to get injured or he's going to feel leggy or jaded as the season goes on. And look, he's one of our more sort of energetic players in the squad. And without his presence, it's definitely uh, quite obvious that we unfortunately struggle without him in the team. So I feel like with the signings that we made in summer, I think in their eyes, Szoboszlai wasn't supposed to be so integral to the first team. He was supposed to be a backup to Verts or a backup to Gravenberch and McAllister. But due to his resilience and the way he plays, you can't drop a player of his quality and his effort. So, he's definitely not helping it's not the team selection, but at the same time, Slot's not helping him by playing him in different makeshift positions. Um, a lot of fans like him in that right back role. I don't, we saw it unfortunately today where we conceded the second goal, and it was due to poor passing or poor judgment from his point of view that led to a corner kick. Before that, he did that throw into Mamadashvili, and Mamadashvili, to be fair, I didn't even talk about him when we were analysing him earlier on. He doesn't look the most comfortable on the ball. So for me, that's a concern if he is to become the long-term successor to Allison, because Allison is amazing on the ball. So that's probably another discussion for another day. But in terms of his performance today, I thought Szoboszlai was decent. So I'll give him a 5 out of 10 as well. McAllister, probably the less said the better. Uh, he was terrible. from the first minute. And some might say to me, "Oh, look, he suffered a head injury that might have affected his contribution to the game." Maybe so, but I, I didn't want him to start. In fact, unpopular opinion, I don't think he should start anytime soon. He should be dropped completely. He does not deserve to be in the starting lineup. And I might even go one step ahead. His question at the club might be, up in the air now. I'm only saying that because I'm looking at the team, and for the way that Stock wants to play, I don't think he fits the bill anymore. When you've got a player like Gravenberch, I'm expecting a player alongside him to be defensive minded, to be dominant in terms of being a physical presence, but also, being a deep playmaker. And look, he is a deep playmaker, but he doesn't hold those physical attributes that he needs to play in a more defensive role. And that's a concern for me going forward. So I might be jumping the gun, I might be going based on emotions right now. But I've heard people say that, look, Real Madrid might want to sign him one day. Look, if it's next summer, let it be. Because I rate the player, I do. But maybe, we need to bring in a different profile and add to our squad where we have more stability in that midfield. We have a more defensive-minded player, i.e., a number six, to play either alongside Gravenberch in a double pivot or to be that single pivot and let Gravenberch be the box-to-box midfield that he wants to do. But of course, he would be a different player altogether now because he has better defensive attributes. But we'll have that discussion further down the road. But in terms of his performance today, I thought he was really poor. He was given the license to really express himself playing in an advanced midfield role. He didn't show it. He didn't showcase anything today. He was getting ran past like he wasn't even there, like he didn't existed. And that's my issue there. People getting past him like, it's like when you're playing football with little kids, you just nudge them out the way because you know they're not going to challenge you at all. That's what it looks like to me. It's like you playing with little cousins or whatnot. Garden football. That's what it comes across when I watch McAllister in the middle of our park. So for me, yeah, it's a big concern, and I wouldn't start him in the next few weeks. I think he needs a rest. I think he needs a bit of a reality check that look, you're not just going to get into this team because you're a World Cup winner. You've got to pull up your socks and you got to really perform if you want to be a star. And it might be tough love, but at the end of the day, we need a reaction because right now his standards are below par and they're not acceptable for Liverpool Football Club. So for his performance in terms of his rating, I'm going to give him a 2 out of 10. Maybe I'm being generous there. I'll give him a 2. Salah, slight improvements from his previous game, but then again, that's not really a high benchmark, is it, when you're not really actively involved? When I say slight improvement, he produced quite a few good through balls for Gakpo, but his finishing today was shambolic, honestly. So rash, so erratic with his technique. And, Salah, some will say, he's not easy on the eye. I completely disagree with those opinions because it's definitely just agendas from rival fans. But one thing for sure in terms of Salah is that he's got a great technique when it comes to shooting the ball with finesse or providing a pass with the outside of his boot. He didn't provide that at all, today, especially from a shooting point of view. That close range shot he had that he didn't even hit the target. It went wide completely. Those are moments where you expect Salah to bury it. There was another shot I remember where, he could have gone for the other corner and then, hit it towards the side netting again. So yeah, poor account in terms of what we're used to seeing. And there has to be a discussion about Salah as well. You know, is he on a decline right now? Or is this just a blip or a phase that the team is going through collectively where we just can't, you know, keep the ball rolling or we're not playing, with that cohesion. I'm not too sure. Only time will tell. But that's a conversation that will need to be had in the future because look, if he's not performing to what we believe, which is the high standards that he's been doing over the years, it might be a conversation that we need to have that maybe he is on a decline and maybe it's time for Salah to move on, in the near future. But I'm not gonna just say crazy statements for the sake of it, but with these performances in the last few weeks, I've assessed the team and the squad, and I feel like you know the players that are performing to a better standard, we've got to try and fit them in. So some players will need to drop, in my opinion. That's how I'm looking at it. And maybe Salah could be someone that gets dropped in the next game just to see if anything changes. Who knows? But let's see what happens in the next game. But in terms of Salah, his rating, not the best of performances. So I'm going to give him a 3 out of 10. Isak, slightly better than what he produced in recent weeks, but then again, probably a little bit, injustice towards Isak because he's not fully fit. He's still finding his rhythm, still finding his real sharpness right now. Not quite there yet, in my opinion. I know a lot of fans are saying he's ready. He's not. For me, he's like 80, 90%. Not quite there, in my opinion. So he needs a bit more work. Had a great chance through on goal. Normally he buries it, but here straight at the keeper. And what we need to do now as a collective is play to his strengths. We're not playing to his ability at all. He's not Darwin Núñez. He's not Luis Diaz. So we got to play the way he moves around the pitch. Because right now he's dropping deep. That's not really his game. He likes to play on the shoulder or attack through the channel. So we've got to utilize his strengths and his best attributes in order to help us get the results in the end. So we're not doing that enough. So that's something that needs to be emphasized a lot more going forward. So in terms of his rating, I'm going to give Isak a 4 out of 10. I don't think he was amazing today, but he wasn't so poor that I'm going to, put him further down the rankings there. Gakpo had probably one of his better performances today. But then a caveat would be that, well, he only scored one goal. He probably should have scored about three or four because he has so many chances. He hit the post 3 times and, of course, scored a goal in the end. And I'll be honest with you, look at the finish. It looks like he just about scored it because he just made contact and didn't really look at where the goal was. So luckily for him, it wasn't an embarrassing moment. But much better performance from him. Why was enjoying in terms of watching him today was that he'll get into positions, but he'll take shots on. That's why he hit the post so many times today. The two shots were cold efforts, and the other one was a cross that hits the outside of the post from that moment there. So he's definitely a player that can really up the speed. He just needs to play with a bit more intensity. I feel like when he's a bit laid back or not as urgent in his game, you lose that instinctive ability on his part. And with some players, you just got to give them that bit of a push or a bit of fire or just put them on a bit of an edge to really go there and make a statement. And that's what we want to see. And maybe because United, because he always steps up against United, he's got a fire lit in himself and he's up for it. But that needs to be done every game. He needs to probably look at every team as Manchester United every week, and then maybe that will work. I don't know, but it's a psychological thing. He needs to push himself to play at that level and play with real aggression and real tenacity. That's what I want to see from Gakpo. And once he's able to do that consistently, we're going to have a player that will produce the goods going forward because he has the technical ability. It's more of a mindset. He's not playing to his strengths. He's not playing at a level that I expect him to be playing at right now. So in terms of today's performance, much better from Gakpo and probably one of our standout players today. So for his rating, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. And that is my player rating. Probably no surprise who gets man of the match, I'm going to award it to, if I can find him on this thing, is Cody Gakpo. So he's my man of the match. So feel free to drop a comment, let me know what you guys think. Before I put on the subs, I'll just go through some of the comments here. Double D, big up Double D as always. He said, why did Mamadashvili not pick up Dom's throw? That's why we were putting the pressure to concede the second. Yeah, I think he just got a bit concerned because as towards that threw it, I don't think Mbemo would have got the ball, but I think he panicked in that moment and he thought, I just need to make that clearance so I don't hit the ball on Mbemo or, I fluff it or I think it was a more of a reactionary type of um, moment there where he just wanted to make that clearance. So I think that's why. But yeah, sort of picked up the ball, but I don't think it was in his mind for him to do that. I think he just wanted to get rid and clear the ball away from danger. So that was I think, his thinking at the time. Delulu Steve, big up Delulu Steve. He says there are absolutely zero positive to be taken when losing Man United at home. Oz. I know you're not wrong there, Steve, but uh, I have to look at some elements of positivity. Um, I don't feel like I've done too much today, but even the ratings, there's only so much I can do. I can't give everyone's ones as well, even though they probably deserve it. But I try to be respectful in terms of what they've contributed as individuals. Unfortunately, we are playing like a team of individuals, which doesn't help our cause. So yeah, not a lot of positives to take. Um, And a lot of discussions need to be made internally to try and resurrect our season. Because right now, I'm not saying we're all done or anything like that, but we're falling behind. We're losing momentum. 4 defeats on the bounce. 3 in the Premier League is a concern. That's probably the amount of games we lost all season last year. That's not acceptable for us to lose so many games in quick succession. So for me, a lot of work needs to be done from everyone, not just Slot. It has to be every player, every person in that coaching staff has to be held accountable for this poor run of form that we're currently envisioning right now. Blue Steve with the other comments says, McAllister is playing like he's in a wheelchair. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with McAllister, honestly. A complete shell of himself right now. They gave Maguire man of the match, FFS grim times. Yeah, he scored the winner, but he was not man of the match. So yeah, just media doing stupid things as always. Now let's talk about the subs that came on. Actually, wait, I've just got another comment here from Steve who says the only chance we have of defending the league now is if Arsenal hit a rough patch. Yeah, well, look, the season's still long. That's the only positive I can give right now is that we're still in October. Long, long way to go in terms of the season. Points will be dropped, and I'm not expecting teams to lose 3, 4, 5, 6 on the bounce, but they will be dropping points with draws here and there. So it's Liverpool's job to capitalize. But right now, I wouldn't even think that far ahead. Got to take a game at a time. We need to get some W's on our belt because right now, we're taking L's, and I'm not liking that. So take it one game at a time, and then as the season goes on, hopefully we'll see some progression. Hopefully we're climbing up, or should I say, closing the gap to the top, and that's what you want going forward. So I wouldn't say we're out of the race or anything like that, but we've got a lot of work to do. To be fair, so yeah, let's bring on some of the subs into the team sheet right now. So Ekitike came on for McAllister, I believe. So let's bring him on. I'll try and put them in their correct positions as well. So give me a minute to do that. And then you've got Jones for Gravenberch. Jones for Gravenberch. And then we have Throwing Vets for Conor Bradley. And then we also have Chiesa for Isak. That was like for like there. And the final substitution very late on was Frimpong for Salah. So Here we go. Then we got 3 more. So that's all the substitutes there. Let me put them in their correct position. So we end up playing a 4-2-4, didn't we? So you had Jones here, you had Verts here, so Bosley here. Put a bit more like that. And then you've got Frimpong, you've got Chiesa, and you've got Ekitike forming your front four there. So that ended up being the formation, which yeah, looks crazy on paper, doesn't it? Now in terms of performances, I actually feel like the substitutes showed a good account of themselves. They definitely gave us a bit sort of a better approach, a bit more directness going forward. But unfortunately, due to us going for this risky formation, it presented more gaps and more issues as a collective. And then, unfortunately, that's why we conceded a goal due to, of course, shape and poor defending from a set piece slash aerial moment there. Now, in terms of Ekitike, yeah, he looked really good when he came on. Energetic, great first touch, great skills, great dribbling. Um, and looking at him today, he wouldn't be a bad option from the left, you know. Like the way he was playing, it's kind of like how Gakpo plays, but he was playing with real pace, real power. So maybe he can do a job there. It might not be his preferred role, but you know, it's something we could try to utilize and see if it can work because very briefly we saw, you know, Ekitike and Isak, you know, passing the ball to each other, and they seem to have like good movement or good understanding. So I want to see more of that. So look, might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but why not try Ekitike on the left and play Isak through the middle, and then they can also interchange during games, so it adds that unpredictability as well. So I'm not expecting Ekitike to play as an orthodox left winger, more of an inside forward in that role, and I feel like it could work. So that's just one way of adding both of them in the same team. But then where did I put Gakpo? For me, Gakpo probably can't be dropped for the next game due to his good performance today. But after that, maybe it's worth looking into. So who knows? That's probably one to ponder, I think, because I feel like it could work. Whether it's a sort of a final solution, I'm not too sure. But right now, we need to find any solution. It's not us just finding something for the long term. We need short term fixes. And so, whoever it is, we've got to do what needs to be done for the team and do it at any cost right now. So, that's how I would look at it going forward. But Ekatike was impressive. Really, really happy with his contribution. So, I'm going to give his rating a, if I can get him to bloody hell, come click onto his name. There we go. 6 out of 10. Uh, who's the next player that came on? Jones, a player that definitely divides the fan base and always will, I think, in my opinion. I thought he was actually very good when he came on, and he has done with these cameos off the bench this so far this season. What pleased me about Jones' performance was his progressive play in terms of passing the ball forward. Simple instructions. I know it sounds stupid to say out loud, but McAllister wasn't doing that. Jones was in a position where, you know, he's in a double pivot. If he's misplacing a pass, it's down to him and he's gonna have to track back and stuff. But even though he did do one or two misplaced passes, but general speaking, he was the one that was thinking forward, driving the ball, trying to make things happen. So for me, very, very positive and very energetic performance from him. And I think he's got a strong chance of starting in the next few games because he is doing much better than what McAllister is showing on the pitch, in my opinion. So, you know, take that as what you will. Now, in terms of his rating, for me, he gets a 6 as well out of 10. I was impressed with his cameo today. Uh, Chiesa, instant impact, and I don't know what is this slot in Chiesa because whenever Chiesa comes on or whenever he plays, he has been impactful this season. So for me, you got to make space for him in that team. And look, if that means we have to drop Salah in the next game and play Chiesa on the right hand side, so be it. You know, Salah is not sort of invincible where he can't be dropped. if he's not been in great form, you have a valid reason to take him out of the limelight. That's the manager's job to do. It's his way of communicating to players. That is why we're paying the big bucks. He needs to speak to Salah and say, look, you know what? I'm going to take you out the firing line. I want you to recuperate. I want you to rest, get back to your normal form, and then hit the ground running again. That's his job to speak to the players like that. He doesn't need to tell him, "Oh, you're dropped," and then add a sort of a negative tone to it. That's what you call man management. So that's for Arne Slot to figure out. But from a footballing point of view, I think Chiesa deserves a start in the team. Ideally, I think he's better on the left, maybe centrally, but right hand side, he has shown some good performances there. Against Southampton, provided a great assist for Isak on that side of the pitch. So more than capable of doing that. So I do believe that he can produce good level performances, whether it's from the start or from the bench. He can do both. I think he deserves to start more games going forward. So in terms of his performance, I'm going to give him a bit of a higher score. I'm going to give him a 6.5 because he provided the assist for Gakpo's equalizer today. Who else do we have? Florian Wirtz. Let me know what you think in the chat. You might think I have a biased opinion because I really rate Florian Wirtz. I thought he was good when he came on. He was more impactful, i.e., when he grabbed onto the ball, he was trying to make things happen. The equalizer came from him being inside the area, inside the box, and trying to, make something happen there. So it wasn't a stellar performance or anything to that nature, but it was better than what was presented early on in the pitch. So for me, a better performance. I'm very surprised that he didn't start the game. Probably should have expressed my real opinion when the team came up, but I thought I'll give Slot benefit of that, and let's see how the team performs. But I think it was a bad call from Slot to not start Verts today, so he gets a 6 out of 10 as well for me. And Frimpong, came on, had a decent game. He didn't play for too long, about 10 or so minutes. Produced that great cross for Gakpo, where, let's be honest, Gakpo should have buried it with that header. So I thought Frimpong had a positive performance. The question mark is he going to be utilized more as a right winger, or do we still play him at right back? For me, it's the latter. Play him at right back. I think that's where you're going to get the best out of him. And of course, could be a viable option for the right wing in certain games as well. But I want him to play at right back because I don't think Conor Bradley is doing it for me. He's not cutting out to be the undisputed choice for that role because he's not. He's been below par this season, and I feel like you get better input and output, I should say, from Pong. So today's rating, give him a 5 out of 10. But I would like him to start in the upcoming games in the next few weeks going forward. So for me, uh, that's how I'm seeing it. I'm just gonna go through some of the comments. I've done all the players, haven't I? Yes. So let me go through some of the comments before we close the show. Let's have a look. Double D says Ekitike was greedy though. I see what you're saying, but I think he was just trying to be a bit more direct because we need to get the goal at the time. So he was just trying to, not to try and do it all on his own, but I feel like he was just trying to be as impactful as possible. And look, maybe because I used to be a striker, I'm not saying I was great or anything, but I had a decent shot on me. But when you're an attacking player and you have this sort of drive and you're a bit more tunnel vision, you do go through phases where you're running and you're not seeing anything else, but you're seeing the goal, and then you feel like I've got the capability of scoring. So you're gonna go for shots. And I don't think they were crazy positions in terms of where he took those shots because Gakpo does the same thing. But I just feel like I saw more sort of aggression, more pace in his play. So that's something that I thought maybe we can see that a bit more. Um, but if you're playing alongside Isak, that's something they can build towards together, but have more passing interchange between the two. But I see what you mean. I just feel like he was more direct, and which was needed at the time in the game. Uh, trying to prove a point before the team. Um, the new Steve says Exeter tried too hard to play hero ball. Yeah, he did, but that might be his age and slight inexperience because he's trying to make a name for himself. He's trying to show the coaches and show the Liverpool fans that he should be the main guy right now. And I feel for him because he's not done a foot wrong. Well, I take that back. The red card, but the red card came from that sort of belief that, here's my shirt. You see my name. I'm the guy that should be in the starting lineup, not Isak, just because he cost 125 million. I think that was his message to the world. So, other than that mishap there, I think he's been really, really good. So, look, it might come across as someone being greedy on that left-hand side. I didn't see it that way. Quite frankly, no one else was making any movement, so there was no passes that he could have, threaded to anyone. So he had to take it on his own accord. So that's how I saw it. But I feel like, maybe if that is a position he starts playing a little bit more, then he can form a better understanding and better relationships with other players on the pitch. He skied several clear-cut chances. Yeah, there was one that went high and wide. So yeah, he didn't really hit the target there. He should have hit the target. Yeah, I think that was just rush of blood in that moment there. Therese says, I agree with the president of the worst Defense League for once. How you do? Oh, big up yourself. Crazy that are down force dive with that red card. Yeah, it did, didn't it? Because then obviously he was not available for that Crystal Palace game, and that's when it all fell apart. So yeah, looking back at it, I can't, I'm not saying that is the reason, but it has played a part, unfortunately. So let's hope we just get it together. Whether it's different personnel or whatnot, that's Slot's job to do is trying to figure out. Um, Hopefully we find a solution. So we've not got long left, we might be feeling annoyed, pissed off, and disappointed however you want to phrase it today. But from the players' point of view, they need to get up and they need to go again. We got a match against Frankfurt on Wednesday. It's an away fixture, I believe. So the players will probably train tomorrow, and then fly out on Tuesday and be ready there for the game on Wednesday. So not a lot of time to feel sorry for yourself. You got to crack on and get back to winning ways, and hopefully the boys can do that in the Champions League and take that good form into the next game, which is against Brentford, and that's an away fixture, so that's a tricky one as well. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to let's go from the top. Oz and Kabak. Thank you to Dara Azizi. Thank you to Double D. And thank you to Deleuze D for your comments. As always, guys, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. In terms of upcoming shows, nothing scheduled for tomorrow, but you never know. Might do a show where I discuss potential tactics or potential setups that Slot can look into to try and get the best out of the current squad. Um, but on Tuesday, for definite, I'll be doing the match preview of Frankfurt versus Liverpool, and then on Wednesday we'll do the watch along for that. And then on Thursday, I should be doing the Brentford versus Liverpool match preview as well. So lots of content coming your way this week. So best thing to do is hit that notification bell so you know exactly what time those live streams begin. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.